Thank you so much for tuning in to Tandem Hope YouTube channel, and I'm your host, Alicia Cole. In today's video, we're actually going to chop it up in 3 or 4 parts because there's so much content. We're talking a little bit about the science of sound, but also the application of using GarageBand to record and edit your audio for your podcast. So bear with me. I guarantee you're going to learn something that you didn't know, and I guarantee that I can communicate it in a way to you that will really simplify just the years I spent learning the hard way, teaching myself, learning from others, so that I could get to the place where I'm at right now. And so thank you so much for checking this out. Check out each part of the video. I'll put in details and in the title which part you're listening to. Make sure you listen to all of them start to finish. I'd hate to lose you in the middle of one of those videos. So start to finish, it's going to be great. I'm excited to help you get your podcast started. So now we're into step 4. Step 4 isn't that easy, right? We're already at step 4 out of 8. So we're halfway there. Select the plugins. So select the plugins for the track that you want to work with first. Meaning, again, this track is this host mic. That's one audio track. Click on the virtual EQ knob up here. And that's in the upper left-hand corner. So consider compression, de-esser, limiter, and gain, and things like that. So let me take a break here and let's talk about something called a plugin. What is a plugin? So there's this little drop-down menu here. A plugin is, let's just pretend it's like a factory or a station within a factory. So if GarageBand is the factory, where we're going to pump in projects, we're going to record it, and then when we're done, it leaves the factory. It's going to leave the GarageBand program, and then you're going to send it out, right? GarageBand is the factory. There's an assembly line within the factory. The assembly line is called a plugin chain. So there's a chain, there's a long line of plugins. These plugins are kind of like stations. So when you think the product is going to be your finished podcast, the sound and the information that you put through the first plugin, the first station in the assembly line, it's going to receive the vocal track. The plugin's going to process that vocal track, and then when that plugin is done, there's going to be an output. It's going to send out that audio track to the next plugin in line, that next station in that assembly line. So for instance, on my screen, I often do noise gate first, because I find that there's a lot of other noises that I need to block out. For instance, I don't record audio when I have certain types of overhead lights that buzz or hum. Or if there's a refrigerator in the room, or a dehumidifier if you're recording out of your basement, or, honestly, any of these noises, or an electrical hum, things like that. So I like to do that first because I don't want to mess with any of the other frequencies and amplify those potentially through a compressor or another plugin. I don't want to amplify those noises I don't want. So I get rid of the noises I don't want first. I kind of chisel away at that. So I put that noise gate first in my plugin chain. So this is the chain here. It's like a sandwich, or whatever analogy you want to use. Next, I actually would say you would want to put your channel EQ next, which is your highs, mids, and lows. I'll talk more about that soon. And then a compressor here, right? So for instance, this is your plugin chain. So the original track that you have, that's called a dry vocal. when you add effects, like plug-in effects and EQ, it then becomes a wet vocal. There's also percentages and ratios of dry to wet vocal, but we won't get into that. But you have that raw, naked, dry vocal that you put to the GarageBand factory. Just roll with it. And then we're going to send it to the first station plugin, which is the noise gate. So it received that audio track that had no effects originally. And then it's going to process the noise gate plugin, and then it's going to send out to the next station, which would be this channel EQ right here. And then when that's done receiving and processing that same track, it's going to then send it to the compressor. So there's a little bit of variance depending on the perspective of the audio engineer and people who edit sound. And it's really a science. They may have preferences as to what the order should be. And for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to tell you some basic tips because that's probably just what you want. But keep in mind that this plugin chain does matter. So each of these, each station, think of it that way, that each plugin is a station. So we're using a lot of terminology here, so just bear with me. So again, a plugin processes tracks. A track, there can be plugins for the individual track over here, but also the master track. And these are the plugins here. Okay? So be mindful of which one you've selected. Okay? So again, the plugin has 3 functions, if you will, or activities. It receives a sound, processes the sound, and it sends the sound out. Sometimes less is more. GarageBand has its own plugins. You can download and other plugins, but since it's just a podcast, I don't think that's probably really necessary for you. But because I also record and edit music, I download other plugins, those things. So when you're using a plugin, it's a very interactive experience. So let me just show you a little bit. If I were to touch this noise gate here, right, it's interactive, right? I'm going to change the environment. You're not going to hear that represented live through my microphone because I'm going through another audio interface and not into the GarageBand, which you see on your screen. I'm using something else, another GarageBand on another screen. So don't let that throw you off. So that noise gate is there. Compressor and EQ. So this is your EQ. Visually, this is really appealing. It's this nice little box here, right? Don't worry about these extra sends, these extra effects. You won't need reverb or ambiance for your podcast because generally, you can change it if you want, but generally in this genre of medium of sound, they prefer a more dry, a bassy sound, a clear vocal for a podcast. So you usually don't have to mess with these other extras that a recording music artist would. So here you have your EQ, your low, mids, and highs. This is very interactive, and this will change what frequencies are highlighted and accentuated in the mix, okay? The easy way would just be to turn this dial and learn how to listen. I'm going to show you later in the video how to use a more of a graph or scientific visual plugin. So I kind of explained what a plugin chain is, and I hope that's clear. I hope that's clear to you guys. Let me know in the comment section if that's not clear, or just do your own research. You'll find out a lot. All right, so we're going to move over to compression, the compressor here. So when do you use compression? The word compress is probably what you think it means in audio. So picture a sound wave from left to right. Okay, add some drastic hills and valleys to the sound wave, like a roller coaster track, just up and down, up and down. Sometimes a sound wave or audio track will have loud moments, like the hill, right, the top of the hill, and quieter moments, which we'll call the valleys. What a compressor does is it compresses from the top of the sound wave. It brings it closer, if you will, to the middle range and bottom of the sound wave, decreasing the difference of height, so to speak. It evens out the waves between the peaks and valleys. It evens out the distance and the height of the peaks and valleys. So the end result is a more even, level mix. So use this on each track, but don't go overboard with it. Don't be too generous with it, but be wise using this plugin. You may ask why. What can happen when you add too much compression? Well, let's say the sibilance might be picked up more. Unwanted noises in the background in your recording environment, whispers. When I'm doing a podcast, I try to remind my guests to not just put their phone on silent, because that will vibrate through the table, and I have tabletop recording mics. Other times I use where it's kind of suspended from something. But we like the table talk kind of feel. But what that does is that sound travels into the mic through the table. So every time their phone buzzes. So that's an unattractive sound, right? So if I use too much compression, that may be a quiet sound in the background, but it may be amplified more if I increase compression too much. And in live settings, you're actually going to have feedback. If you use too much compression, you're more likely to have feedback with your microphones. But I don't think you'll have a problem for that recording for a podcast. Another thing to consider with compression is using a pop filter. So on my microphone right now, I have this just spongy foam cover on top of the microphone. I know other people are bigger fans of using it's got like a gooseneck flexible arm with this, it looks like a paddle or a waffle on a gooseneck, and you kind of just crank that around in front of your microphone with some distance, and it will catch some of the wind or sibilance or the puffs or plosives, right? Obviously, I'm exaggerating that a bit, but every person's voice is a little different. So we have to, again, kind of problem solve around that, and you'll learn as you go. So another thing also is proximity effect, which is, the distance from the microphone. And the purposes of this video, I'm trying to keep it basic. I don't want to go into what type of direction microphone it is, like omnidirectional or condenser mics, or those are things you need to research and learn about if you're going to purchase a microphone, and purchase it for the environment that you will most likely be recording in. I chose the microphone I'm using right now because it's well known for that good bassy low end, but it captures a lot of quality and character. But my favorite thing about it is it does a really good job of blocking out sound from anywhere else in the room. So it's really good for recording if we've got a guitarist over here and a drummer over here and, keyboardist, and there's just all the sound bouncing around. My microphone is less likely to pick that up when I put it in the right environment. So you got to figure out what works for you. Okay. You might not need to go so fancy, and that's fine. The microphone might also, because of proximity effect, it might also bring up your heavy breathing. So that's just something to keep in mind, and maybe to remind your guests. That's why it's good to have a monitor system where you have your headphones on. And again, looking to the screen, that's when you have this lit up here, monitoring, so that you can hear yourself and hear the other person. So if you're recording a podcast, have headphones of some kind, or earbuds, something, because if you hear your guest listening as you're speaking or introducing them, and they're just like, just breathing into the microphone awkwardly. You could edit that out, but you might have to teach your guest kind of how to use a microphone as well. So just keep that in mind for those of you looking to have a guest. And I think I really just want to remind everyone that remember that we learn by doing in this kind of setting, getting ready for a podcast. It's experiential learning. Your ear will learn to pick up these tricks along the way as you practice these techniques. I know it's a lot of information, it's a lot to consider, but just hang in there.